Hello everyone, Anirudh here. So, as all of you know that I love to click candids. These raw, unposted moments, and they're absolutely wonderful. Frankly speaking, India is one of the only countries where you have dedicated candid photographers. We actually have a distinction between traditional and candid. Candid photography by in itself is not very internationally popular. It's not that kind of a recognized term elsewhere. However, recently Fujifilm, it's a very big mirrorless camera brand, they recently had to fire one of their ambassadors because basically this guy was doing street photography and his methods were considered too intrusive, too rude, and basically it got me thinking that what is the ethics behind a photograph? How do you determine if a photograph is ethical? So let's get started. Now, when I'm doing candids, they look like this, or this, or even this. This one's out of focus, but it's still fun. There are good photos and there are good bad photos. When I'm covering an event, I am usually using my 35mm lens. It's a very environmental lens. You need to get up and close with people, but it's enjoyable, it's fun, people love it, they're having fun, and I'm also having fun. So, but the fact is that there is a level of consent towards me photographing them. It's candid, it's unposed, but they are aware of my presence and they are aware that I'll pop up from anywhere and click them. And my photographs are color graded, there is hardly any Photoshop. One problem with photography is that if you use Photoshop, people think it's manipulated and it is automatically degraded. So people tend to go for more realism. And when you go for more realism, one of the most purest forms of photography is street photography. And street photography is when you hit the streets, everything's unposed and you click what you love. Now, many would say that street photography is an act of voyeurism. It's an invasion of privacy. It's a very, it has its controversies. Now, looking at the legalities of it, it changes from place to place. There is no question of challenging the law. However, a question comes to the ethical aspect of it. When is it correct ethically? Now, coming to the ethics of it, recently Tatsuo Suzuki, he's a street photographer. He was one of Fuji's ambassadors, and you can see him now. This is how he photographs people. It is intrusive. Yes, I don't do this. It's rude when you do something like this to strangers. It's very invasive even. And there are people who have said that if he did that with a smartphone, he would be arrested. Now, the question is that how much is okay, how much is correct, or should such violations of privacy be tolerated? Now, in many cases, photographers do ask strangers to whether we can photograph them. It's a fun exercise, yeah. You do get good, interesting results for it. I never tried that. I may do that in the future, but there lies another great question over here, which is about depiction. The photographer is an artist. He has his narrative, and every photograph tells a story, but which story? That's what matters. Now, before the era of fake news, post-truth, and propaganda, photographs were considered quite authentic, and as they were authentic, they were also, many of them were false. A very good example is of Nat Geo's Afghan Girl, this one. Now, this photograph was not taken at the war, it is considered to be highly dubious in which circumstances it was photographed. It was actually posed to a certain extent. And another example is this one, the Bajrang Dal rioter. This guy was not a rioter, he was just a shoe shiner, and this was an open act of propaganda. So again, we think about what story we are telling. Question again lies to depiction. Some of the greatest photos are like this, the series The Americans, and we have Fan Ho's works where you can see such masterful work of shadows and light. Now these works of art are inspiring. We still look at them for inspiration. And yes, on a side note, stalking celebrities is pathetic. Yes. In the 1960s, Anita Ekberg, she's an American actress, she was stalked by the paparazzi. She was so pissed that she came out of her mansion with a bow and an arrow. This actually happened, and this was the last photograph that photographer clicked that day. He was shot in the arm, and he deserved it. Now, while taking pictures, we focus on what we see, but frankly speaking, we are supposed to focus on what we wish to show. And for what we click, there is actually no proper answer to what is ethical. But the litmus test, what I use is, how would I feel if I am the subject? Is my depiction of the photograph correct? Would I like to be depicted like that in the circumstances? Is what I am saying true to the story? These are the greater questions we must ask ourselves when we click. After all, in photographs, we capture moments, we show emotions, and we show stories. A photograph is not merely something that exists. It's an artistic expression, and it's actually a reflection of the photographer.